Alright, howdy folks, welcome back to Top Comics Pressing, and in this video what we're going to do is kick off a case study on everybody's favorite mutant first appearance. Don't blame me, I said it. First cover appearance, we'll clarify, first cover appearance of Wolverine here in the Incredible Hulk number 181. As you can see, this one is coming to us in what I would consider fairly low grade, but it is attached. I did check the MVS as well, and it is in here if we check, so that's an all-important component of this book, making sure it's not cut. This particular book has a bunch of issues, so there's some light staining that you can see in there. There's some light staining here. There's a little bit of light staining there. You can see that this thing has got all kinds of crinkles. So if I put this in the rake and glare, you can see it there by Hulk's rear end. If you scroll over, you can see it around Wolverine. And if you look up at the top there on the Hulk logo, you can see all kinds of light bending. And there's a bunch down here. Now, more subtle than that, though, we can scroll down the spine and see that there are quite a few ticks. But the staples are both attached at this point. And even though the bottom one is showing a little bit of weakness, there's not any rust. And so I think that this one should be okay on the staples. One of the other things I want to point out is that there is a good amount of surface damage. So right in here, you can see that there's scratching or scuffing, scratching or scuffing, scratching or scuffing. And then there's a little bit of deterioration in here. Right there and then along the bottom edge. So this thing's going to be, low grade even on a good day compared to many of the Hulk 181s you might see. But hopefully we'll be able to give it a heck of a facelift. So, and again, if you look through here, there's a whole bunch of damaged paper up top there. There's a whole bunch of creasing and bending. And if you look kind of in the center of the back cover, you can just see that the whole thing has kind of one massive bend to it, including down here. Now, if you open it up, there is staining on the interior. Oddly enough, that staining is not on the cover, and it does permeate most of the book. So if we go look on the interior top edge there, you can see it, and there's some light staining there on the bottom corner as well on both sides that you can see. It's not a big deep stain, but it is real, and that matches up with the missing chunk here out of the front cover. So this thing, even though I might be tempted to want to give it a whitening just to make it look better, that absence of the staining on the cover could be real. If the paper on the inside got wet or somebody spilled it, or depending on where this was sitting, and you can see it moves throughout the book there as you kind of turn on that top edge. And so there's nothing inherently unbelievable about where the stains are, but what we don't want to do is add suspicion, because having stains on the interior but not on the cover is one of the things that you can look for to get flagged for a cover being cleaned. This book has clearly not been cleaned and pressed. You can tell that, and so I don't think that this book has a cleaned cover. I just think we want to make sure we avoid any suspicion, and so we're going to stick to a dry clean only. Now, this book has all of that deep dents in it, and you can see right across here that actually goes all the way through the book on the top edge, so you can see the crinkling up there, and some of those other pages on the bottom front did have some interior damage down here that we're going to want to fix out. Where did those go? There's a couple of them that had just a little bit of tears and chips. Yeah, so things like this we're going to want to fix. You can see that there's one right there too. And so those little bits, yeah, and right here you can see all the crinkle on the interior newsprint there that goes all the way through the book. And so this thing's going to need a whole book ironing. And so we're going to spend quite a bit of time ironing it. But before we do that, of course, we're going to kick off a dry clean. And so we can just go ahead and get started with this one, because I already got pictures because it came to us raw, so we didn't have to inspect it in the slab. I'm going to go right down the rear spine. Some of this is going to be staining, and we're not going to be able to do anything about that. But hopefully we can give it a heck of a facelift. Usually I start on the front cover, but what the heck, the back cover's facing up here. And these are a little bit deeper spine tears, so I'm taking the pressure a lot lighter. And as I've said it before, you kind of want to rub parallel to that tear, not across it, at least not across it with any level of force or pressure. And there's a bunch of crud here on the yellow. I'm just going to give it a very, very light eraser wipe. Given all the surface damage on this book, I'm not going to use my Mr. Clean eraser sheet across that yellow, because if the gloss is gone, it's much, much easier to rip color off. And we obviously want to avoid that as much as possible. Now we do want to get this in the best shape imaginable, but as you've heard me say before with dry cleaning, you know, it's not 100% sport, especially things like this little tear right there. You want to make sure your eyes are in front of your eraser a little bit. It'd be real easy to hit that and cause a much bigger tear or chip off. And, you know, I'm using maybe less pressure than I would, particularly with the signs of moisture damage. So anything that has had water damage will be more fragile. I don't want to use the word brittle because I don't think that that necessarily fits, but it certainly is going to be more susceptible to further damage. And typically, if you get a really good humidity into the book, they usually are more supple after you've fixed the you know, moisture damage with a really good press. This one I'm pretty sure is going to be a double press issue. So we're going to dry clean, then we'll iron. That's going to take a while, so clear your agenda or pause this one to come back later. This all the way here is actually tanning on the cover. There's no surface dirt there, and on the cover corners that's going to be a lot more delicate. So I'm going to skip doing any, you know, really intense dry clean there. So we're going to dry clean, and then we will end up ironing the heck out of this thing. We'll do interior and cover, so that'll take a while. And then what we're probably gonna have to do is press this thing twice. And for the first press, I'm going to deliberately over humidify the book. And to do that, I'm gonna open it up to the centerfold and let the pages hang out, open and exposed, and let them mop up a bunch of humidity. And then we're gonna press it. And that is probably gonna cause some flaring. I doubt it's gonna come out of that press looking very nice. But what we'll do then is follow it up with a second press. And for the second press, what we're gonna do is humidify it less than we would normally, and we're gonna let it go for a little bit longer. And the reason for that is we need to add too much humidity to get the fibers to relax and adjust, but we need to then fix the flaring, and so we need to cook out that humidity and let it rest. So it's kind of my recipe for this, and if it doesn't look too good after the first press, we might actually go iron press, iron press. Optimistically, we'll go iron press, press. It's rare for me to want to press a book for a second time, but I think this is going to be the exception with the crunches in multiple areas that go all the way through the book. So there's a lot to worry about. But we got a bunch of that crud off over here, so I'm happy with that. That's a good start. I'm going to go back to that bottom spine corner. That one, I think we might be able to improve a little bit. Again, if you're new to doing this on a book that has this much creasing and surface wear and stuff like that, you're not gonna pick up any brownie points by overdoing it. And so having a little bit of restraint on the cleaning and whitening and stain removal and stuff, I think is a good decision on a book like this. All right, I think some of this might just be stuck on for goodsies. I think some of it might just be damaged paper. We'll just give it the good old college try there for a second go. Hit up the space here between the text. All right, I think all of that is looking way better. Definitely got all kinds of crud off. Again, this is tanning over here on the bottom corner, but there's still a little bit of crud I can see. Yeah, I think that's going to be about it for the back cover. Flip this thing on over. All right, we'll start on the white swish here. And I'm going to get out my micro eraser, clean that tip off because these foul real quick. Oh yeah, got some of that crud off. That was nice. Sometimes you luck out and the crud just pops right off. Not usually the case, but I'll take it when it happens. Wendigo. claws. Gotta have the claws. All right, and then up here. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. All right, I think that's a dry clean. Give me a second here to adjust. Ooh, maybe not. Let's hit this one spot. Nope, it's not gonna do it. All right. Okay, that's a dry clean. Give me a second here to get the iron out and heat it up, and we'll come on back. All right, folks, time to get ironing here. We have our hanger 9 iron there set just above the 2, and so that's where we're gonna like it. This is some fresh roll of parchment paper. So if you haven't seen me do this before, it doesn't really matter what brand you use, but I like parchment paper because it's moisture permeable. Do not get wax paper. Wax paper is made of wax and it will melt wax into your comic book. But any of the parchment paper that are, or sometimes silicone release paper, but this water permeable, this happens to be the Target brand, it looks like. So that's what I'm using here. And then of course I have a cotton round that's wetted, and I wet this over a garbage can with my little Mr. Spray bottle just to get it some humidity. And so with a book like this, you know, basically what we're going to do is iron the whole cover, and I'm just going to gently add some moisture to this by just giving it some wipes. And again, I'm not trying to add like so much moisture to it that do anything crazy. And then I'm just going to iron the whole cover, and we're going to do that first left to right, or sorry, top to bottom, then we'll go left to right. I'll probably have to do that twice. And, you know, I've said it before, the ironing process here. Oh, and I have a magazine backer board at centerfold to help me make sure I don't iron over the staples and bust them or cause any tears or damage to them. So the magazine backer board is there to add just a little bit of thickness to it. And, you know, I'm sliding this on here. I'm looking for that little bit of a wave in front, and you want to keep that from creasing because you can iron that crease into your book, which obviously is quite embarrassing. So you want to avoid those creases, the waves. It always does this at the edge because that's where it folds under when you're doing it. So don't worry about it around the corners. It's just kind of the big wave in front. And I'm not applying a lot of pressure, just mostly letting the heat and humidity do its thing. Again, this book overall is pretty white. It has a little bit of light tanning, but nothing too crazy. All right, I'm actually going to cheat here. Instead of wiping this, I'm just going to spray this whole thing off camera. Put a little bit more humidity on it. And if you do the spray method instead of the wipe method, you kind of got to let it go for, you know, give it a good 5 or 10 banana to let the moisture soak in. And then I just try to wipe it off to make sure there aren't any droplets or anything like that. And so you can see that there's a little bit of moisture on my hand there. All right. Just do the exact same thing, and then we'll change directions. This thing's got a lot of wrinkling. And you can put some downward pressure on the comic book with your opposite hand, just to keep it from sliding. So I'm making sure I'm doing that away from the spine, making sure I'm doing it away from the staples, but my left hand there is just to keep it from sliding across the table. Obviously that would be very awkward. All right, so that's it there. I'm gonna change angles so that I can iron left to right now. And I prefer to go from the spine to the open edge just to give it the most flexibility coming out. And, you know, if you get done ironing here and you look at your comic book and you're like, man, this thing still looks like crap, what you want to do is then give it a solid press. So the ironing is really to loosen up the paper fibers. It's not really there to fix it or hold it flat. It also is radiating heat, and so there's always a heat gradient. And that causes the paper to kind of deform, and so you'll always have this like kind of odd wavy look after doing the ironing. The press is really there to flatten it out. You might ask, well, what's the point of the ironing then? The hydrogen bonds in the paper fiber, so most of the paper fiber is cellulose. The primary component in cellulose is sugars. They're linked together. They've got hydroxyl functional groups, OHs. Those OHs kind of reach across and grab each other's chain, and it makes kind of a big spider web. And what you're trying to do is momentarily get them to forget who they're next to so you can kind of rearrange it. All right, we're going to do one more left to right. I'm going to do the squirt method here off camera. You can just kind of spray off the mist bottle. Okay, we're going to give it, and by the way, I'm spraying the top side, not the bottom side. So again, you want all the moisture that the comic book is exposed to be going through the parchment paper. You don't want to have the direct water droplets ever touch the comic book. All right, just wipe it all down here with the cotton round, make sure we get all the big droplets off. And so by applying that very short-term high heat, high humidity, you're just trying to zap it so it kind of forgets where it was, loses its prior state. And then you're going to use the press to kind of set a new state. So hopefully between when it's ironed and when it's pressed, it's kind of got a state of amnesia where it's forgotten where it was, but it hasn't quite settled on where it is. That's exactly what you want to avoid pressing into your comic book right there. A little bit of a wrinkle I had on the prior one, you can see there, so avoid that. I know there's a good amount of wrinkle here across the Hulk's rear end, so hopefully we'll get that nice and smoothed out. Alright, so there's about 4 ironings across on the front. I would say it ostensibly looks a little bit better already. Yeah, so we'll do the exact same thing here on the back now. A little bit of a moisture spray there. This one's kind of opposite, so I'm gonna rotate it. Bigger of a droplets over here. Mop those up. And by the way, the iron can't like really keep up with, you know, all the moisture you're dumping on it. So it's important to, you know, give the iron some few seconds there in between to make sure it's up to heat. Otherwise, you know, you might have it set on 2, but it might only have the capacity to heat up to 1. The other reason I kind of like using my left hand on the comic book is I can feel how warm it is underneath. You want it to be warm, not scalding hot, but definitely have some heat on the trailing side, like right here. dog in the background. He's having a good time doing whatever he's doing. Told you this is going to be pokey. It's definitely not fast. Especially with this much wrinkle going on. If you're ever in doubt about how much you can get out, you know, it's not a bad idea to press the comic first before you go through all this ironing. That's just my intuition, and is that it wasn't going to get a whole lot better without kind of the full ironing treatment. All right, time to go left or right. I will say James at Key Issue Collectibles introduced me to this ironing top bottom and then left to right concept. He helped save me on a giant size X-Men #1 I had that had whole book water damage. And I actually did this on every page of that book, which was a mega bummer because, as the title says, it's a giant sized issue. But I was able to get a book that did have whole book water damage. The book was like a 3.5 and I bumped to like a 5.5 or something like that. So it was a pretty sizable increase, and it was not a whole lot of stain removal and whitening work. It was just slow, delicate ironing like this that it's quite tedious. Okay, and ended up ironing every page of that book twice. I think I did it all, pressed it, didn't look any better, ironed it every single page, then pressed it again. It's just an outstanding amount of work. Now I'm gonna let the iron heat up there. Now some folks might be tempted to iron it from the inside as well. I do not like doing that if I can avoid it, only because the staples, right? The staples are always the weak point on a comic book. And some cases you can get it to lay flat. You might have enough confidence in it, but man, I just am always nervous about staples. It's just so easy to blow them. And it's a very big grade hit if you do. Was all there. You can see that there's still pretty good indent right here. We'll have to see what that looks like after the press. And I'm gonna hit that area once more here. It's just such an egregious space. I'm gonna give it a little bit more moisture on the top there, a little bit more over here. We're gonna have to go to the interior now, and And interiors are always dicey, but one thing I do is I have these handy dandy cotton rounds that I use for all kinds of my other stuff anyway. And what I'm going to do is fling that over and use that. Also going to rehydrate my cotton round. Running low on water here, so I might have to take a time out while I fill up the spray bottle. Getting low. But this should be enough, hopefully, to get us through there. I always try to wipe my fingers off because it's really easy to accidentally have too much moisture. And what I'm going to try to do is hold this with my left hand, and then every single page here I'm just going to give a quick dab and then a quick zap too, just like that. And yeah, and that's usually enough to convince it to forget where it was at. It's a little bit wetter than I'd like at the moment. It's actually not too bad here. It must have been. It's actually moving a little bit with the stain. One of the best parts about doing the newsprint is you get a whole bunch of fun must-addict smell when you do that. Oh, the fun. Not like mold, it's not scary, it's just like, you know, old book smell. You definitely get that. I gotta bump my iron here, it's a little bit warmer. If you ever hear any sizzling or crackling, turn down your iron. It's not a good sign. Keep balling this up. It's not what I want to do. I think it's pretty much done by there. I'm going to let the press take care of the rest of that. That's most of it for sure. Let's just see where else I want to get. I know that there were a couple of those really light tears on the interior bottom, so let's get those before I forget about them. I'm going to rearrange this a little bit. Do it this way. I'm just gonna, this is why I like having the SRP under there. Okay, make sure that's stable. I'll get my little scraper here. And I like to dab, and I'm actually going to do the one underneath first, because that one, I don't want to iron the top page with that one on there. So I'm going to do that, and just gently unfold it. I'll give it a little bit of a moisture dab right where it was folded under in the seam, and then a little kiss of iron. And that's that. And that one's already moist, which is good. Fold that under, and you can see where it was folded under. We're just gonna give it a little bit of kiss of moisture. And then this, you can see that little bit of missing paper there. That's the gripper tear from manufacturing or production. So that's normal. It's not like it's missing anything. A little bit more of a bump up here than I'd like. So this angle I can kind of see it a little bit better. The wonderful thing about the newsprint is it's generally quite pliable. Yeah, I can still just see a little bit more of that up there than I'd like. typically responds quite well to a little bit of a zapping. Okay, now the centerfold I'm going to find here. I'm just going to do the center of the book at the centerfold because that's where the big whole book dents and bends are at. I just want to give that as much of a zap as I can. So we're going to go into the centerfold of the book, and for this part I'm going to use my parchment paper, even though I just got done showing you all the stuff, but I don't want to get too much humidity on the comic itself, especially if I'm doing the full metal. My hope here is that I'm going to transfer a bunch of the steam kind of into those pages and really loosen them up from the inside out. I'm just going to turn up the iron a little bit there because most of it's going to end up evaporating that water right out of there. We don't have to overkill it here. Again, the parchment is much easier to reset than the cover material. I'm specifically doing it at the centerfold to try to make sure I'm not detaching stuff. So, you know, if you lay a comic book flat down at a centerfold, ideally there won't be a whole lot of stress on the staples. Do it anywhere else, it'll have some left pull and some right pull depending on which side is open more. And so we're just going to try to give a little bit of a zap from the inside out. Alright, for a book like this, I normally would put it in my humidity tank, and if you want a video of my humidity tank, I've got a separate one on that. It's got a Blastoise Pokemon on the thumbnail, but if you search humidity tank or hydration tank, I forget which, on the channel, it should pop up. Pretty sure it's an Amazing Spider-Man 300. Oh no, it's an Amazing Spider-Man 316, I think. I'm pretty sure it's the Venom one. Well, they're both Venom ones, so that's kind of redundant. But anyway, if you want that video, check it out. If I remember when I post this, I'll cross-reference it. But that one kind of gives you my humidity tank setup. And usually for a book like this, I would do 4 minutes total humidity. In this particular case, I'm going to do 4 minutes with it open at the centerfold. And then I'm going to do an additional 3 minutes on the back cover. So like I said, I'm going to deliberately over-humidify it. Typically over-humidifying it is either going to make bacon, that is, the comic's going to have some wave to it, or it's going to cause flaring, where the cover doesn't sit right, and it's kind of lifted up on one of the corners. That's definitely a sign that it's over-humidified. In this case, we're going to do that on purpose to get out all of the wrinkles. So again, we need that humidity, and we need the heat, and we need the pressure to really apply. And so that's going to be a deliberate choice on our part. But after we do that, obviously we don't want to have the flaring and the wrinkles or the bacon be permanent. And so what we're going to do from there then is repress it. The first press I'm going to do at 155 for 15 minutes with kind of my normal stack of magazine backer board at the centerfold and the 65-pound cardstock under the front and the back cover. So that'll be our normal press. We're just going to do that. So kind of 3 minutes of humidity on the cover, 4 minutes of humidity open to the centerfold, 155 degrees, 15 minutes. And that's going to be about as much as I'm going to do there. And then we'll see what this looks like in about 12 hours. So 12-hour cold press after that. So stay tuned for the results. All right, folks, this is our post-first press look here at this copy of The Incredible Hulk. As you can see there in the raking glare, it's a lot smoother. You know, we had noted a bunch of wrinkling down there by the Hulk's leg and rear end, and that looks, you know, it's not perfect, but it is definitely a lot better. Up over by Wolverine there, where we kind of inspected before, it is mostly cleared up. And then, you know, if we flip it on over, there was that really extensive bend and crunch along the back here. And you can see that that is almost all cleared up as well. So this thing, on average now, looks a lot better. It has a few light wrinkles. I'm going to skip an extra iron, only because I don't see where we're going to pick up a lot of benefit from that. What you will notice, though, is if I hold it top down, you can see that there is some of that light waving in here, and it does have a little bit of flaring on the open end if I, just kind of let that hang out by itself. So that's a symptom, that wave with the flaring, that there was too much humidity used in the press. It's quite common for people to get that when they're starting out. In this case, we did it on purpose by both humidifying the interior as well as the cover. The other thing I'll point out is if I touch this on the inside now, it does feel much smoother. There was all of that kind of firm crunch to it that you could feel both on the top edge and in the middle, and it's definitely smoother and supple now on the inside. All right, so the fix I have for flaring here, it's a symptom of too much humidity, but to fix too much humidity, you have to add a little bit more humidity back. So we're gonna give this now my normal kind of 3.5 minute hydration, and then I'm gonna do what I call bake it out, where I'm gonna press it at 160 degrees with the exact same stack, but I'm gonna let that go for between 25 and 30 minutes. And you might say, whoa, will that damage the comic book? I've never seen any evidence of that. On rare occasion, when I was starting out, I would even accidentally forget to turn the press off and come back 12 hours later and the press would still be on. And those were quite horrifying experiences. When I did that, what I would do is turn it off, obviously, and then instead of doing a 12-hour cool down, I'd give it a full 24-hour cool down before I popped it. And the books that I accidentally left on for a full 12-hour press actually turned out okay, and I didn't see any evidence of brittleness or damage to them. And so I'm going to hope that translates, and I think the 25 to 30 minutes is sufficient to bake out all that extra humidity, and that seems to do a pretty good job to give you kind of a nice finish when we've accidentally introduced kind of that very subtle wave. It's still better than it was, so if I put it flat here, I would say it's only coming up off the table maybe a 1/4 inch, so we're not giving it too much extra. But that's going to be the plan for this one, so we'll come on back and take a peek at it after another press and another 12-hour cool down. All right, folks, here we are with our send-off video. So this is one final look at this copy of The Incredible Hulk number 181. Both staples are firmly attached. All of that wrinkling has been taken care of on the front and the back cover. Of course, there still is a lot of creasing, so color break, color break, color break, color break, other color break, missing chips. So this book's not going to be high grade with all that surface damage, but if we could come up with a 4.0, 4.5 copy somewhere in that ballpark, I think that would be exquisite. This area looks a lot cleaner, a lot brighter, and of course that full back cover wrinkle is wiped out. So I took a lot of detailed pictures. I'll be posting those on Facebook and Instagram when we drop this video, so be sure to check those out. Now, as always, this is going to be, mere seconds to you, but it'll be weeks, if not months, to me before I am able to see the final CGC result of this. So please do, while you're waiting for me to finish up here, click that subscribe button, thumbs up the video, leave a comment in the comments section, and hopefully I'll be able to reveal the CGC grade. And of course, don't forget to go to Facebook and Instagram to find the detailed before and after pictures, because they're quite striking on this one, and I'm very pleased with how it turned out. Nice and flat, super sharp in that Mylar. And the other thing I always do here, of course, is we're going to take our key issue and we're going to put it fully protected. It's currently in a silver or standard age E-Gerber Mylight with a full backboard, and we're going to slide that into another E-Gerber Mylight with a full backboard, being the bigger golden age size, and we're just going to wrap that there to protect it. And that way this comic is going to be protected from the front side and from the back side, and of course the nice border here that you can see means if this comic is impacted by something, or if somebody unpacking it drops it on the floor, it should be that outermost bag and board that takes the brunt, then the innermost board, and then the comic book. So we've got at least 2 layers of protection on there when we ship it like this, which is how I like to do things. All right, leave that thumbs up, click the subscribe button, check me out. Hopefully we'll have good news from CGC. All right, folks, CGC is back with a verdict, and they have passed judgment on this copy of The Incredible Hulk number 181. They have deemed it a 4.5 copy. Now, that's really at the high end of where I thought this thing would land, with all that severe spine damage and the back cover damage and you know, some of the surface creasing. So I'm really ecstatic for the owner of this book. After they got it back, they told me how much they'd paid for the book, and they're pretty jazzed too, because they didn't think it would come in anywhere near that high. So that was at the high end of what they were looking for. You know, sometimes, especially with pressing, it's important to look at the before and after pictures and not just the number up at the top corner. It's really easy to take a 9/8 book, press it, and get a 9/8 without really improving the book at all. I think it's a lot harder to take some of these lower grade books and make them really presentable, make them solid mid-grade copies, remove the dirt, don't introduce any new damage, which, you know, on low grade books with structural defects and issues can be a real risk. And so this one I'm going to call a success. I think the owner is quite happy with how that one turned out. And so, you know, I just, you know, remind you all here to take a moment to click that thumbs up, smash the subscribe button, leave a comment for me down below. Let me know how you enjoyed the techniques. I'll post the full before and after pictures on Instagram so you can see the full transformation.